How does bacteria in our gut and on our skin, on our body, and our hair, how does that affect the immune system? Good morning, hope you are all well. What we're going to discuss today is if we can get our immune system working, functioning properly, will that help give us some defense against COVID? Not so much stop us from getting it, but if we do get it, will that make us stronger and help us fight it off and cut down how serious the effects would be? In today's show, we have two amazing guests. We're going to South Africa to listen to a nutritional expert who is Victoria Fenton. And then we'll be joined, lots of you said so many great things about Dr. James Gornick, the dentist that we had on the other day, the award-winning dentist that we've got James coming back a little bit later on as well. So let me just quickly remind you, the whole purpose of the show is to say this. We know Corona is serious. We know it's affecting so many people. We wish our Prime Minister Boris a speedy recovery. We know it's serious. The thing is, after social distancing and then washing our hands as much as we can, what else can we do to protect ourselves and our loved ones? And we firmly believe that the third best bit of advice is look after your health. Change your diet, try and booster your immune system. And that's going to be really the subject of today. Our second mission, of course, is to raise money and awareness for the food banks across the UK who need our support now more than ever. And then throughout coming weeks, we're going to be talking to a lot of guests about what might life look like post-corona. What would it might look like? What are the positives that, obviously it's a terrible thing that's happening, but what are the positives? Maybe we're going to be a healthier nation. Maybe we're going to be more integrated and have stronger communities. Maybe we won't travel as much. Maybe we will cut down global warming. There must be some positives we can take from it, and that's part of what we're going to be looking at. We also are saying that while the McDonald's and the Greggs and the Subways and all those places, the fast food restaurants are closed, and with restaurants closed, can we together find new foods that we're interested in? Can we learn new recipes? Can we cook new meals? And to that end, we've got a competition running on Primal Living's Facebook page where we're asking you to send in photos of things that you cooked for the first time yesterday. And at the end of lockdown, we're going to pick a winner. And then we're going to give a prize out, sponsored by Gemporia, of £1,000 worth of jewellery, or come and spend a weekend with us guys. And we're going to go to a local boutique hotel in Warwickshire and have some great food. Your choice, but keep sending in your photos of what you cooked for the first time yesterday. Now, let me just give you a brief overview about the microbiome, why it's so important, and then we'll go and speak to Victoria. There's a great book, a really amazing book called 10% Human. It's by Alana Cullen. And what she describes is this. She says, look, we have 10 times more bacteria on and in our body than actual human cells itself. So that being the case, in theory, we're only 10% human and 90% bacteria. Interesting thought, hey? What about if I told you the weight of bacteria in your stomach weighed more than your brain? That's right. Collectively, the weight of bacteria in your stomach weighs more than our brain. And what about if I told you there are good bacteria and there's bad bacteria? And most of it's quite good, but we want more of the good guys and less of the bad guys. And how do you get good guys? Well, we're going to talk about that in depth with Victoria and then with Dr. James. The key thing is this also, that depending on what type of bacteria in your stomach dominates, and although there's tens of thousands of strains, two in particular in the stomach make a huge difference. One called Firmicutes, one called Bacteroidetes. By getting the balance wrong with just these two, it can almost force you to put on body weight. Like a battle you can't win unless you get your gut bacteria right. We'll be discussing that a lot more later on too. But just before we go to Victoria, yesterday we asked you to guess how much sugar is in a banana. What is the effect on the blood glucose levels when you eat a banana? And the reason I brought this one up was we're all taught, aren't we, that we need 5 fruit and veg every day. But the simple answer is, if you're trying to lose weight, if you're diabetic or pre-diabetic or you're obese, bananas are one that you probably want to cut down on, because it's not as simple as saying just have 5 fruit and 5 veg, or a mixture of the two. You've got to understand which fruits are great for you and which ones actually cause you to put on weight. Yes, bananas are full of potassium and other things that are really good for us, but they turn into a huge amount of sugar. Should we reveal now, Jack, exactly how much? So this is in a medium-sized banana, the equivalent effect on your blood glucose level of taking 9 cubes of sugar. So if you're trying to lose weight, the banana's not going to be your best friend. Change that out for the berries, the blackberries, the blueberries, the strawberries, the raspberries. And yesterday, actually, we had a great question from Jenny Blacks that we didn't have a chance to get round to answer. And Jenny says, what's your opinion on juicing? Well, I say quite simply this. A, depends what you're juicing. But I don't really like juicing. I prefer blending. The problem with juicing is that you end up, let's take your juicing oranges or apples. You end up with some of the goodness, but such a small percent, because you're getting rid of the fiber. Here's the problem. Let's say you juice apple juice or orange juice. You end up with all the sugar, which is predominantly fructose. Fructose turns into saturated fat in the body. Not great. But what about blending the whole thing? Well, then when you start throwing in complete fruits, then you're going to get the fiber. So blending, I think, and juicing, very, very different things. Jenny, some advice is read some books, do some research, avoid juicing wherever you can, switch to blending. Right, let's go and talk all the way to in South Africa, the lovely Victoria Fenton, who's a nutritional expert, is joining us this morning. How are you?
Morning, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really super this morning. And so for those who don't know, you just literally moved from the UK to South Africa just in time to get locked in.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, it was a little bit beforehand, but yeah, basically.
So you've not seen all the beautiful sights yet in Cape Town, but something to look forward to the other side of this.
Yeah, I've been sort of inundating myself with enough social media, so I know what to see when I can leave my house. That's the idea.
Victoria, just quickly tell us your story, and then let's really today focus on an area of health and well-being that not lots of people have really researched yet, because it is such a complicated beast, and we're all starting to learn about the microbiome. But let's have your story, and then let's really dive into what the microbiome is, how we protect it, how we make it stronger.
Yeah, so very briefly, my story is I was trundling along, living life fine, but at 17 got very, very unwell, quite out of the blue. I was just very sick one night, and then my relationship with food and my digestive system changed irrevocably that night. And it sent me into a long journey of trying to investigate and find what was wrong with me, because nobody really knew. And eventually I was diagnosed with a connective tissue disorder, which I thought would give me loads of answers, and I thought would be the solution, and somebody would give me a pill and my life would be changed. It wasn't the case. And of course that sent me on my own investigation into more natural things and how I nourish my body and how I treat my physiology and my mind and all of that kind of stuff. And I became a healthcare coach and practitioner, and now I'm a functional medicine practitioner, nutritionist, and I help not only people with connective tissue disorders, but a whole range of people, just to optimize their well-being, basically.
So you've basically taken control of your own health, and thank goodness you have. So the microbiome, we learned 2,000 years ago by Hippocrates that he said back then that all illnesses start in the gut. Obviously today we know that's not quite true, but still a vast majority of illnesses do start in the gut. Why is the microbiome so powerful?
Well, there are many reasons for that question, and I spend a lot of my day talking about the microbiome in the gut. But essentially, if you think about it, everything that makes a human being up has to be derived from the energy that we get from our nutrition that we eat. And that's not just a human function. That is actually achieved by having a lot of different strains of bacteria within the large intestine, mostly, to do that breaking down of food, that job of getting nutrients out of the food, but also in so doing, creating vitamins and minerals and all the things that actually we need as human beings. So it's a symbiotic relationship, and so much of the way we derive nutrition from food is based on how the biome is working.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it, that our planet's like 4.4 billion years old, and bacteria have been around for about 3.5 billion years. We've only been here for 2 million years, and probably when us humans have wiped ourselves out, because we're a little bit stupid at times, when we've wiped ourselves, they'll still be here. So it's kind of their planet and not ours, and we're almost like a vehicle for them, aren't we? And therefore we carry them. I read something the other day that said on your fingertip there is more bacteria than people living in Great Britain. So we've really got to understand this relationship, that if we're a vehicle for bacteria, how do we encourage the good guys to jump on board, and how do we diminish the not so good bacteria, because it seems to have a huge influence on our health.
Yeah, it does. And there's a lot that we know, and there's a lot that we don't know, actually. And actually, this is kind of one of those areas where, as practitioners, we have to be very careful about making grand claims about specifics, because actually the general is much more useful in this situation, where we know that the interaction between our microbiome, our nervous system, and then every system of our body is direct, and there is a real interaction that we have. And whether we're sort of carrying the gut bugs, or it's their planet and we're kind of interlopers, it definitely is a relationship, and we need to nurture it, because they're doing so much for us. And having dysbiosis, which is just a fancy word for an imbalance between good and bad bacteria in the gut, can cause not only direct gastrointestinal symptoms, but actually system-wide issues where we are struggling to lower inflammation, to have an effective immune response externally, or having too much of an immune response. There's quite a lot that is involved if there's just dysbiosis or imbalance in the gut.
Yeah, absolutely. And talk us through that relationship between sort of the gut and the brain and the axis, and why actually getting the right bacteria and looking after the microbiome can affect mood and depression, anxiety. Give us a bit more on the link there, on sort of the vagus nerve.
Yeah, so there's quite a lot. So the major link, as you mentioned, is the vagus nerve. So what we know is the vagus nerve is the wandering nerve. It's one of the key nerves that link the brain, and the brain stem in particular, which comes out the base of your neck, through to organs around your body. So it actually goes to lungs, a lot of the digestive system. And it what we call innervates the digestive system. It helps with the peristalsis, so the movement of food through the digestive system. Helps with the nervous system is controlling our digestive system all the time. It helps with the production of acid to break down food in the stomach, the production of enzymes when things move into the sort of small intestine area. So the nervous system is fundamental. But the bacteria and the fermentation of the bacteria and the messaging that they're having within themselves, and there's all sorts of theories about communicating through lights and protons and all that kind of stuff. And we know a little bit, but what the bare basics is, the bacteria and the microbiome, so the gut biome, are interfacing and sending messages into that vagus nerve, even if it's just stress or tension or fermentation, and those signals go straight back up to the brain. And it becomes this kind of, it's gut-brain axis, as you mentioned, where there can be inflammation, stress. It can come from the body, not just from the brain down. And it's what we call a bidirectional relationship. So managing all of this it's fundamental for the bedrock of just being healthy and relaxed and calm and not inflamed, actually.
And with it being so powerful, I had somebody say to me the other day in an email, they said, with it being so powerful, if you believe it, why isn't there so much science around it? And I believe the reason is, we're just starting to learn all about this, but if there are 10,000 different strains and there is more bacteria in our gut than the weight of our brain, and there's 10,000, so if there's 10,000 different strains, how many different combinations are there? And this is an area of science I think that we've got to really study a lot more, and it may give us the answer to so many medical issues and problems and solutions, but my gosh, it's going to be complicated, isn't it?
And more than that, so what happens within a sealed, dark, warm gut environment is remarkably different to what happens in a petri dish in a lab. And one of the main differences in bacteria, actually, that we don't often think about if we're not in the science, is that some bacteria are anaerobic, as in they can't survive in an oxygen-rich environment. So as soon as you take that out of the gut, they die. So we can't study that in a lab setting. So we're kind of having to do research based on food interactions and symptoms and outputs. It becomes this kind of dark, murky world that we can't really study very well. But it's getting there, and we're getting a lot more research, not only on the sort of bacteria themselves, but as a general rule, what from the nutritional world or supplement world, probiotic worlds, although that's a kind of very grey area, but what all of those things can have a direct impact internally. And studying that is often studying other responses, not just the bacteria themselves. So studying blood glucose responses to certain foods, or inflammation levels, or there's so much that we can study as a kind of biomarker, but actually mapping the microbiome itself has become way more difficult than I think anybody thought it would be.
I agree. Mapping it's difficult. They've done some great experiments, haven't they, where they've taken feces from identical twins, but one has become overweight and one has stayed slender, and taking those feces and sadly using mice, but the research is out there, so I'll quote it, and they've literally taken the feces, smeared one group of mice with the obese twins' feces, and then the slender twins on another group of mice, and carried on feeding the mice the same, and the mice from the slender twin stayed slender, and those smeared with the feces from the obese twin all became obese. In other words, it's basically saying, if you get the wrong bacteria in the stomach, that can be even responsible for weight gain, and therefore really trying to find ways to get the right bacteria is really, really important. Loads of questions coming in. We'll dive to those if we can in a second. What's your quick take on what sort of food should we be eating to get the microbiome in working order? Because without a shadow of a doubt, with COVID and Corona and all sorts of flus, getting a strong immune system, probably the best thing we can do should we encounter the virus, I would have thought.
Yeah, definitely. And there's basically two general rules when it comes to gut bacteria, and actually bacteria everywhere. We shouldn't just keep this about the gut, but yes, bacteria. So ultimately it's fiber and polyphenols. So that's actually fruit and veg, mostly. And as you were saying earlier, not juicing, but whole fruits, whole vegetables. It's eat the rainbow. So all the different colors, that's where your polyphenols are. And it's the fibrous vegetables. So there's a lot in the kind of green leafies and all of those things, but also anything that contains a lot of fiber, as in is difficult to break down. But we also mustn't forget the goodness that comes from starchy vegetables, in particular, all the vitamins and minerals around the skin. So think potatoes, sweet potatoes, carrots, all of those kinds of things. Don't peel them all, don't take all that goodness off. There is a lot of fiber and a lot of nutrients, and those, what we know about the gut bacteria in general, the more fiber, the lower the risk of all-cause mortality, which is a fancy way of saying the healthier you are. And the more polyphenols, the more the good bacteria are fed, as opposed to actually just nourishing these firmicutes, which essentially ferment quite a lot of things. So that's the way to shape nutrition.
Fiber is so underrated, isn't it? And the World Health Organization many years back went, if you could get to 35 grams of fiber a day, you drop your chance of a heart disease, a heart attack by like 50-something%, all type mortality by like 30%. And yet we don't really consume enough fiber. And therefore, if you are juicing, you're missing the bit that you really, really, really want. And with that fiber, it seems to be, that's almost, I always say, it's like the life draft within sort of the intestines and the stomach. It's almost like what the good bacteria want to live on as a life raft within there. So as much fiber you can. And I liked what you just said about the skin. I read once about an onion, because when you're a bit lazy in the kitchen, you just chop it and you peel off 2 or 3 layers, and then you just jump into the middle bit because it's quicker and easier. Whereas I read that nearly all the goodness is, the second you take that skin off, it's that one outer layer, that defense mechanism where all the antioxidants are. So my kids laugh at me now because I just diligently take all the peel off the onion, because that's where all the goodness is in the. I haven't said hello to my kids yet this morning. Hello, kids.
We don't mind.
You don't mind? How are you all?
We're all good.
We're all good.
Hi, Victoria.
Hi.
So the outside, and just so everybody understands that the fruits and veg, they have to defend themselves against animals, against rot, against fungi, and they're antioxidants that protect themselves on the outer layer, that outer skin. Is it correct to say that's what gives us all the antioxidants? In other words, what they used as their self-defense then becomes our self-defense when we eat it. Is that a good way of saying it? Or
little bit more complicated than that, and actually it's worth commenting on, because there are some people in the kind of spheres of health who say actually completely opposite, like fibre is terrible for us because it gives us loads of digestive symptoms. But I would also argue that that's probably your microbiome's imbalanced, so maybe fix that. But also the whole polyphenol thing is actually, it creates what we call eustress. So it's a slight stressor to our physiology. So we have what is called an adaptation response. It's actually healthy for us. It's like exercise. It's not in and of itself healthy, but it creates this little frisson of, oh, I need to adapt to this, my internal physiology. And therefore, that's when we have much more benefit. So yes, they're super healthy for us, and they're actually helping our bodies to be healthier.
Brilliant. Thanks for clearing that up. That's great. So lots of questions coming in for you. Samuel says, can our gut bacteria affect our sleep? Does sleep therefore affect our immune? So can the actual bacteria we have, the types of bacteria, affect how well we sleep?
Yes, we think that they can, mostly because if you've got negative bacteria or things that are not doing great things for you, they tend to be replicating overnight. And if they're creating toxicity rather than nutrients, then that's something your liver has to deal with when you're sleeping. So it means that you're working all the time instead of actually resting. So that can be an impact. And sleep is hugely impactful on the immune system. It's like it's a nutrient. I see sleep as, it's an essential thing that our physiology needs to be rested in order to mount effective responses. And the risk when you're not rested is either you mount too much of a response or not enough of a response. So yeah, the right level of sleep is vital.
That's great. Nick says, are probiotics the same as prebiotics?
No. So prebiotics are fibers that feed bacteria. Probiotics are typically bacteria in and of themselves. So probiotics sometimes contain a little bit of prebiotics, normally just enough to feed the bacteria to help them last through the digestive tract. But also not all probiotics are created equal either. So prebiotics are things like inulin and fructooligosaccharides, stuff like that can feed bacteria in general. And you can buy those in powder form. It's not always great to take them like that. Why not just eat fiber-rich vegetables? And probiotics are bacterial strains, often not strains that are going to populate the gut, but strains that can shift the gut and repopulate what is in there.
Yeah, it's a really good point, isn't it? Because earlier on you said about that, some strains can't sort of live with oxygen. For example, Bacteroidetes, we believe, are a strain in the stomach that help us reduce weight. So people say, well, why don't you just put Bacteroidetes in a probiotic? Well, the reality is, as soon as you put them in oxygen, they disappear. So totally get that. And prebiotics, would you say, obviously fiber the main one, but also things like garlic, onions, and things like that act as a good environment for the bacteria?
Yeah, so what you're looking at in garlic and onions is inulin. They're really rich in those kind of fibers. So garlic, onions, and like what you were saying about the skin, I just roast things in skin. Like it's just, why not? It dries and comes off, so you're fine. And yeah, so those kinds of things, leeks, alliums, all those things, really good with having loads of fiber.
That was a revelation to me, garlic. I mean, I used to spend ages on a Sunday peeling it, but now I just slice the top, loads of olive oil, put it in the roasting tray, and then pop them when they come out, and they're just, gorgeous. And so good for the immune system. So many questions coming in for you. Iftikhar, who I know very well from India, he works in our team in India, says, good morning, Victoria and Steve. What are the natural things exercises help in making good immune system? In other words, what is the link between exercise and the immune system?
Okay, so basically when it comes to exercise and a lot of things, my main tip is variety. So if you're doing lots of high intensity interval training, you're kind of very one trick pony, but you're creating quite a lot of stress doing that. So again, back to that eustress idea, yes, it's great to do that once, maybe twice a week, but then you need to do some resistance training to give your body another stimulus. Then you need to, mix it up a bit so that your body is constantly being challenged, because the healthiest thing for an immune system is evolving against challenge. This is why there's the whole theories about exposing children to dirt and soil and farms and all those sorts of things, because our immune systems evolve against things that we're trying to be safe against. The whole discussion about antibody testing and are we creating antibodies to this coronavirus? This is what we're talking about. Are we creating defenses? Same with exercise. It's like if you do the same workout every single day, you will very quickly master that skill and then no longer be adapting. So it's about changing it up and mixing it up. And the more variety without overstretching and overreaching, the healthier you will be overall.
Yeah, it's a great topic you just picked on there, really, in a sense, and touched on, because undoubtedly right now, washing our hands and being extra clean is the best thing we can do after social distancing for preventing the coronavirus. But you also touched on the fact that there is a lot of belief out there that, you know, especially kids that live in cities and brought up in cities, there's so much bacterial wipes in our homes now and everything, and they just don't go out and play as much, whereas kids out in the sticks, out in farmlands, are getting dirtier and picking up the good bacteria and all bacteria and build their defense. So we're maybe, and I'm very careful what I'm saying, not right now because we must wash our hands, but we've become, outside of corona, probably over cleansed.
Yeah, there's definitely that argument, and I would hold to that, actually. And I think we're in an interesting time because there's two things that come with that. There's the overuse of antibiotics historically, and over cleanliness. The antibiotic thing is changing a lot. The medical industry are not over antibioticizing. That's not a word, but you know what I mean. They're not prescribing antibiotics as regularly.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah.
But we are still very sanitary. Like, you can't almost buy a hand wash that isn't antibacterial.
Yeah.
So whilst in this moment in time, actually soap, it's not the antibacterials, it's just the emollient nature of the kind of bubbles, getting those particles off your hands is the best thing that you can possibly do as a prevention strategy. But longer term, I actually think the larger conversation is, how do we become more resilient and adaptive human beings generally?
Mm-hmm. No, it's a really, really, really good point. And to the point about the bacterial, so many people have been talking to me about, you know, they're doing what they're told, but their skin has become terrible because of all the chemicals in the antibacterial washing, and they're doing that now 10 times a day, and before they probably would never use bacterial, they would just use soap. And people, again, have so many problems with their hands at the moment. So it just goes to show what chemicals, you know, aren't the best thing most of the time. Hannah says, what are the best foods for the ultimate gut health? I think we've covered that one quite well. But she also says, what are the signs of an unhappy gut? What can we look out for? What's a sign that we've got an unhappy microbiome?
Okay, so there's several things here. One, people think that they should never have any sort of symptoms when they eat, and that's a bit idealistic. You know, it's a living organism, our microbiome, so it's supposed to have a little bit of gas and things at times, particularly if you're having loads and loads of fiber. But ultimately, if you're feeling really full really quickly after meals, or you're feeling like you get bloated, or if you're not having a regular daily bowel movement, these are all really, really good indicators that there is something not right within your digestive system somewhere. Yeah. So those are kind of three key things. It's like, is it going down from the stomach? Do you feel bloated and kind of swollen in your abdomen area? And are you having that daily, easy bowel movement?
Yeah. That's a really, really good point, isn't it? Because a lot of people don't realize is a high percentage of our feces actually is bacteria. So if you're not getting it regularly and normally at the same time every day, then there's probably something not quite right with the microbiome. Elliot says, oh crikey, there are so many questions for you. Okay, we'll do a conflicting one here, and we'll deal with it actually. Alba says, fiber linked to health has not been proven. Maybe, well, how do you prove some of these, I guess? I would argue that
science, yeah.
Yeah, there are some people that say too much fiber is not a good thing, but then there's, I mean, maybe not proven, but there seems to be so many reports and papers that suggest it is good for us. So how do we respond to the fact that Alba is saying fiber linked to health has not been proven? What would you say to that?
Nutritional science is really difficult. So it depends what questions you're asking and what you're actually looking for. The two things that we've said there is fiber and health, and they are really vague things, like what fiber and what is a health outcome? What are we looking at?
Yeah.
There are lots of studies where fiber has been linked to lower incidences of cancer, but again, there's studies that contradict that. And what we get back to is individual personalized health, particularly when it comes to you and all your cells as a human, plus all of the millions of bacteria you have in and on your body. It's a very difficult thing to study and get absolute results. What we can say is that we know that fiber has a massively beneficial impact on lots of different things that we look at for health outcomes. So cholesterol levels, blood sugar levels, talking about inflammation levels, all of those things. So sum total of all those health outputs, we can kind of assume that having a high fiber diet in the context of a healthy gut population is actually a very good thing. If there is dysbiosis, fiber feeds everything. So it's about modulating those fibers. And if there's serious issues, working with a practitioner to resolve what is actually happening in the gut biome, so that you've almost got a clean slate to then add in the fibers and the fermented stuff and all those things.
That's really, really good. Thank you for answering that. And we like questions like that are, challenging us. Chris Patterson from the PHC is an ambassador for the PHC in Bradford. I'm guessing someone like myself who is mainly carnivore will need completely different microbes to someone vegan, for example.
It's a really good point. So we're making a lot of generalizations, and the ecosystem of the gut biome evolves to suit your diet. So if you're mainly carnivore, there's not enough data on that sort of diet yet to know whether long-term health outcomes are really beneficial. But it is very likely that the microbiome itself will have shifted to be more digestible, to digest more proteins. And things like Protella digest carbohydrates more specifically, so they'll probably have slipped down a bit. And this is, when I do tests on people where I can actually see clinically into their microbiome, I love it because I can almost tell them what they're eating before they tell me what they're eating, because we can see this. We can see how it's a symbiotic relationship. Your gut biome evolves to suit what you're trying to feed it.
Yeah, that's fascinating, isn't it? And it is like a moving feast, but just like our skin replenishes itself, it grows, it dies, it grows, it dies. Most bacteria have quite a short shelf life, so you can shift the species in your stomach quite quickly from one species to another, and they want to survive, so they will adjust and for the type of food that we're eating. So really good question there. Thank you very much for that. Maya says, how can we improve our microbiome in a lasting way? Wow, what a great question.
So there is no one trick thing that is like a one shot and you're done, unfortunately. It's just consistency of habits over time. And that's literally health, unfortunately. It doesn't mean that you can't have the odd meal which contains zero fiber and is just a pizza. But it does mean that consistency of these things over a long time, it's a living organism. It's not a fixed entity. So if you drop back on all the fiber and stop having this sort of vegetable-rich diet, etc., you will lose some of the bacterial species. And just to come back to the carnivore thing, there's no good or bad in nutrition as far as I'm concerned. I don't think food should be demonized that way in terms of if we're all eating whole, healthy foods, if you're mostly carnivore or mostly vegan, there's a lot of flex in that. And it's how you physically feel good. And your microbiome will be part of that. Do I feel good eating carnivore or do I feel better eating more plant proteins?
That's a really good point. I always say that it's not really meat eaters against vegetarians and vegans. That's the wrong battle. We're on the same side. The battle is against fake foods. The battle is against chemical enhanced, too much pesticides, too much herbicides, and chemicals in processed foods. The battle isn't really vegan against meat eater. We're all should be battling, how do we eat real foods? And for a lasting effect, I would say, Maya, try where you can to go organic, try where you can to go natural foods that haven't been messed with chemicals and so on and so forth. I'm a huge believer in fermented foods, back to the way our grandparents used to feed us, as much fermented foods as possible. I personally believe fiber is important. So fiber, fermented, real whole foods, cutting down on anything that's highly processed, highly chemicalized. Because look, we've lived with this bacteria for the last 2 million years, no problem at all. But the problem really seems to have really got out of kilter for the last 60 or 70 years. So it must be something we've done to the food we're eating that's caused some of these imbalances. You know, insulin's worked beautifully for 2 million years. It's only started to screw up in the last 100 years or so. So eat real whole foods, and that's the lasting effect, I would have thought. Is that an okay summary, do you think, on that?
Summary, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and there is no, this is not, nutrition isn't made in one meal, it's made over lifetimes. But the more that you can allow your body to be nourished, which equals eating foods which actually have nutrients. It's really simple. Like they don't have any nutrients and they're full of chemicals. It's not actually food. Like it's not nutrition. So yeah, it's very easy to shop and cook and eat foods which are whole foods, and that is just health.
Yeah, and in fact, there's a great phrase there, isn't it? It's nutritionally dense. Try and look for foods in your diet that are as nutritionally dense as possible. So in the greens, look for the cruciferous family with the spinaches, with the cauliflowers and the broccolis. If you're going meat, try and go organic meat because, you know, it's real. It's not been, you know, it's not had hormones pumped into it and so on and so forth. So just real food, and try and go as nutritionally dense as possible. Mm-hmm. Victoria, can we try and keep you on the line? We're going to try and do a three-way conversation. Can we try and get James on, Jack? So James Goulnick is an award-winning dentist in the UK. He's twice been voted by his own society as the #1 dentist in the UK. And we thought we'd get James on. He was on the other day. Brilliant chap. Because he was talking about bacteria in the mouth and how quickly, if you eat too much bread, that can turn into sugar. The wrong bacteria causes obviously tooth decay. And I don't know what's happening in South Africa, but in the UK at the moment, every single dental surgery is currently closed. So right now, if we have a problem in any way, shape or form in the mouth, and we all know how painful that can be, anything we can do right now to cut down people having problems in the mouth with the teeth or the gums is really important. And it's all around bacteria, and here he is. So,
hello,
Dr. James, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Hello, Steve.
We had some.
Victoria, nice to meet you. I was listening
nice
eagerly. I think all my points, I was knocking them off as you were doing them. Done. So, thank you very much for that. As you can see, I'm in the surgery, and there's no one else in the surgery. We are socially distancing, and there's no patients. So, I'm very happy to be on air to help your listeners try and stay away from any hospitals and dental practices at the moment, because we're all closed.
James, the other day we had some amazing feedback, and I said to all my friends, I've sent out an email to all my staff across all the companies, and I said, look, if you have any dental problems in the next few months in lockdown, you must watch that 15-minute segment, because you gave us such great advice about what to do if we get a toothache, also how to avoid toothaches and so on and so forth. And today's subject is bacteria and the immune system. And what I was fascinated about the other day, you said that in one ways, it's almost a privilege to be a dentist because you see things going wrong, probably even before the doctors, because the state of teeth and gums is an indicator to what's going on, probably in parts of the body we can't see. Talk us through that, your belief around sort of bacteria and the immune system, if you would.
Okay. So I think the mouth is sort of the bodyguard for the rest of the body. So that usually whatever, as we were talking earlier on about nutrition, food doesn't get in there unless you put it in there. So this is the first line of the defense is your head, is what you're going to choose to cook, what you're going to buy, and then it's actually what you put in your mouth. And your mouth, if it's got a healthy microbiome, and the biome in the mouth obviously connects through the gut and going right the way through, if that's got a good defense, then it can protect the rest of your body. But if that is wrong and off, then you're starting to be in trouble. And one of the things I remember seeing an advert for one of the toothpaste manufacturers that people do is when they brush their teeth and they spit out in the morning and they see blood in the sink. And for some reason, people think that is normal. Whereas normally, if you were washing your hands with water or soap or whatever, and you suddenly saw blood in the sink, you would start panicking, ring up your doctor and go, what am I going to do? But for some reason, people think bleeding gums is normal. And I'm here to say it isn't normal. Your body shouldn't have inflammation in your mouth and in your gums. We all have, we talked about the microbiome. There's thousands of bacteria in our mouth, but there's a balance between the good and the bad bacteria. And if we're feeding it poor nutrition, if you're putting it the sugar, the carbohydrates, all the poor foods, then the bad bacteria start overtaking, start producing acids, and those acids are what cause the damage to your teeth. So it's more about the balance. Can we get the balance right? And for me as a dentist, I want people to brush their teeth. I don't want you to use any chemicals. I'm very happy to use just water. You don't need any chemicals. If you're feeding yourself correctly, you don't need any of the stuff. I know you see all the adverts and you have the mouthwash with this, that, the other, or whatever. It's like, we all want a quick fix. Well, actually, the easiest, cheapest, and quickest fix is a toothbrush with some water, and that is it. We're trying to add all these extra things just to try and get the balance right. But I think really we need to sort of step back a bit and say, okay, what should we do? And I think in a way, this pandemic is almost a great reboot for us. And say, okay, we're all at home. We're all with our friends and family. We've all got time. There's no one got any excuse that you can't brush for 2 minutes. There's no one who can't excuse that they can't cook from fresh. I mean, the only slight excuse is some of the supermarkets don't have everything and I can't get everything. But you've got time to plan. Let's plan a balanced diet. Victoria talked about all the different things about the nuts and the seeds, the whole raw vegetables, all the different vitamins. I know you've been talking about vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin K2, trying to get the balance right. And we're not perfect. We're not going to have the balance right every single time. Sometimes it goes off, but luckily as dentists, when you can come and see us again, we can see the mouth, we can see the health, we can see what's going on. We can say, I spotted thousands of patients who are pregnant. They didn't even know they're pregnant. We've got obviously the signs of stress. One of the first signs of stress is in the mouth. And we see people who've got very healthy gums and suddenly things go off and we start having a conversation and realize they're clenching, grinding their teeth, they're not sleeping well, things are going off. And Victoria, I think you mentioned it about to keep the microbiome right. Stress is one of the big things we need to really work on because that affects everything. And then sleep, obviously water, and then the right nutrition. So as dentists, we're quite lucky to look inside because most of us really don't know what's going on in our mouth. We can see what the inflammation is in the gums. We can look for tooth decay. We can also look for autoimmune diseases. Some of the early autoimmune diseases, you see signs in the mouth. There's loads of connections now between gum disease and heart disease, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, certain cancers, pre-birth, lots of different things going on in the mouth first. So if we can get rid of gum disease and you can look after that, you're going to really help the rest of your body. So from my point of view, it all starts in here.
Yep.
And if we can be careful what we put in here, and again, the balance is right. I get people who go, oh, I've just had a bar of chocolate. What am I going to do? How am I going to... Okay, we're all human. We all go off every now and then. It's just getting us back and just slowly nudging back into it rather than going, I'm going to be perfect. I'm only going to have raw fruit, vegetables. I'm not going to have any of this. We're human. We can't all be perfect. But please do your best, especially in this time when you have no excuse about time, to do this, to actually start looking after your mouth. Because the really important, I've been having messages every single day now. I've got people saying, I'm getting mouth ulcers. I don't normally get mouth ulcers. What's going on? Why am I getting mouth ulcers? I'm not sleeping properly. There's all these things people are worried. And unfortunately, going on social media and on the news, you're reading all the different symptoms for coronavirus. Going, isn't mouth ulcers? My 17-year-old son yesterday said, a mouth ulcer is a sign I'm going to have coronavirus. I've never had mouth ulcers in my life before. Is it a sign? He was like Googling. I said, no, it's you're stressed. You're not sleeping properly. You just need to chill out and relax. You'll be fine. And use salt water, mouth rinses, and everything will get back on. It's very easy for some people to say, you know what, I'm at home, I'm just going to eat rubbish.
Yeah.
And luckily, all the Nando's and the McDonald's and KFCs and all that are all closed, which is a great thing. Hopefully they'll open again, but I'm sure they will at some point. So people have to cook from fresh again, and they're learning things. And actually, one of the things we're doing is we do this 14-day sugar challenge where we get people to cook from fresh for 14 days. And I'm sure Victoria knows the studies, but After about 6 days, your palate recalibrates. So your taste buds change. So suddenly you notice that, wow, that tastes really sweet now. I never noticed that before. And it's about trying to reboot. And we've got a perfect opportunity to reboot. We have the time, we have the information. So let's do something positive with this time rather than just look at the news and get worried.
James, some great advice there. Can I pick up on a few things? I loved what you just said there, that in theory, if we're eating the right foods, we actually don't even need toothpaste. We just need to clean with a brush and water. But of course, if you are eating the sugars or foods that turn into sugar inside the mouth or chemicals, then that's when we need the chemicals to clean our teeth, to get rid of, or the pastes and or whatever's in the toothpaste to get rid of things that we shouldn't be eating in the first place. I was just thinking that's a win-win for the big corporations, isn't it? That they rot your teeth in the first place with all the nonsense they put in and all the sugars, and then the same companies then go and sell you the toothpastes to try and make it a bit better. So great advice there. If you were to only eat vegetables that are fibrous, and the fibers act as cleaning the teeth, we all know, for example, the skins on apples. We've taught that by our parents, but also the broccolis and the cauliflowers, they're good for the teeth. We wouldn't, in theory, even need toothpaste. I like that advice. I love your word. Let's reboot. Let's take this time with the food chains all shut, to recalibrate and reboot what it is that we eat. And I also like your point that, I'm guilty of it myself. I do brush twice a day, but normally only nowhere near the 2 minutes I should. I've got no excuse right now. So take that time and make sure you're looking after your teeth. Right, I'm going to go to the questions coming in to see what we've got for both of you. Joey Bull. Thank you. This is such a broad cover of microbiome. Excellent. That was to you both. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Joey. Right. Deep one here from Chris Patterson from the PhD. Your thoughts on C-section and the effect of baby's microbiome? Is that a bit deep? I talk about that a lot in my book, Chris, about the effect of having a C-section and the reality, of course, C-sections when they're a medical emergency or needed. We can't get away from the fact that they're saving so many lives. But there is without a doubt an effect on the microbiome, certainly for a short while, and also if you have a C-section followed by not breastfeeding, it's a double whammy. But let's park that one for now. But a great question there relating to C-sections. Samuel said, which microbiome is most important, gut or mouth? I would say they're probably equally as important, but the signs show up in the mouth first. Nick says, I'm worried about a symptom right now with dental practices closed. If I'm worried about a symptom right now with dental practices closed, what should I do, James?
Okay, well, I've produced a guide for the public to actually look at the common dental emergencies and what you can do about them. The three most important things you can do at the moment while dental practices are closed is eat real food, cut down on the sugar and the processed things, because you're not going to have a problem then. The second thing is don't use your teeth for things they shouldn't be used for. So opening packets, tearing sellotape, do not do that. I get thousands of people have to fix for that. They're the two big things. And then the last one is to brush your teeth for 2 minutes twice a day. You've got the time, clean your mouth.
Brilliant advice. Hannah said, I've got my wisdom teeth coming through. They're quite painful. What should I do if dental practices are closed?
Okay, good point. The most important thing as they come through is to keep them really clean. You don't want to get a secondary infection around them. So you can use a very small, it's called a single tufted brush. It's a little tiny tufted brush. You can clean around the area. If you want to, you can dip it in some salt water and just clean around there. It will bleed, it will be a bit sore, but just keep it clean as best you can. If it becomes infected, you can buy an antiseptic gel, but that will then interfere with the microbiome. So we really don't want you to do that. We definitely don't want you to take antibiotics, because then that's going to be even worse. So it's really about keeping it really clean. If you're in pain, then use some sort of analgesic depending what you can have. So whether it's ibuprofen or paracetamol, but really the number one thing is keep it clean. Don't stress about it. Most of the time they go away on their own if you can keep them clean.
That's really, really good advice. You know what? A moment ago, I said maybe we won't answer the question about C-section right now, but actually, I think maybe we should answer that for Chris Patson, because that leads on to how important the microbiome is. So, Victoria, talk to us about C-sections and the microbiome, if you can.
Okay, so you have to be incredibly careful when you're talking about pregnancy, birth, all of that kind of stuff, because there is enough pressure on young mums, new mums, all that kind of stuff. Ultimately, there is a difference if you have a C-section versus a natural delivery. There's many more differences than just actually the microbiome. There's a whole pushing mechanism that doesn't happen as it should do. It's not irrevocable. It's just different. So there are measures that you can put in place. You can take a swab of the vaginal biome and instantly put it onto the baby's face or body generally, and that can help. As you mentioned, breastfeeding and ongoing breastfeeding, if that's possible for you as a mum, great, wonderful, because that's another transfer of bacteria. Even then, kids are way more resilient than we give them credit for. So there's always stuff that you can do, even if it's getting some baby probiotics and putting it on the bottle teats so that they can get some bacteria into them. Yes, there is always an optimal, but there are many ways to resolve the issue if for any reason optimal doesn't happen that day. And that's just the way to approach it.
So what we're saying is everything's fixable, just got to make the right steps post having the baby.
As long as you're mindful that this is a thing, you can do everything from birth. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Crikey, so many great questions coming in. Here's an interesting one, James. Neil said, and I know you've educated me a lot on this subject, is there any evidence that fluoride in toothpaste is bad?
Okay, this is a whole webinar on its own. Fluoride in the wrong quantity is toxic, as are most chemicals. We ideally don't want to be putting any chemicals in our toothpaste, so we just want to use water. Now, most people use some sort of abrasive in their toothpaste because they're having tea or coffee or something and they want to remove the stain. So that's the biggest thing that people use in toothpaste. There is lots of evidence that the right quantity of fluoride regularly will help remineralize, so it will harden the teeth and put more calcium in, so it will make them more resistant to bacteria attack and also acid attack. But if you're not having the acidic drinks and you're not having sugar, then you don't need them to be resistant, because as we know, our body has our own resistance. Our skin has got resistance, our teeth have got resistance naturally built in. Unfortunately, in the environment we are now, and especially in the last few hundred years, it's changed. And an interesting study I read a few months ago, which was the Queen Mary University of London, they dug up lots of skeletons when they were doing the Crosswell project, and they had 5,000 skeletons, and they compared them for Londoners in the 17th century, which is where they were, compared to them now, and the teeth were better in the 17th century than we are now, which is amazing because there was no dental care there at all. If you had a problem, they just pull it out in the street. So 400 years ago, the teeth were better than they are now. So it's all down to our diet.
There's a parallel here, James, and the parallel is we're doing this show to raise money for the Trussell Trust for the food banks around the UK, and the CEO of the Trussell Trust says, eventually I want to put my own charity out of business because we just don't want people to go hungry in the UK. We have to find a real lasting solution. For now, we have the food banks because we need them. Long term, we've got to find a better solution. Must be the same for dentists in a sense then, that if we stop eating all the crap, then we won't need dentists to keep repairing our teeth. You're going to put yourself out of work, or then you could be making our smiles look nicer maybe then.
We can do the cosmetic stuff, but also there's always going to be an accident. People are always going to fall over and chip and whatever. There's going to be breakages. And also we're sort of the guardians to what's going on in the rest of the body. So for mouth cancer, it's not all down to diet. There's genetics involved and things like that. So we are there to screen people for disease and to guide them to the right practitioner. And also for nutritionists, it's brilliant because we can start the conversation about diet because we can see things are going wrong and go, you know what? You don't want to see me. You don't want to have a dental bill. So this is what you need to do to change it. And it starts the conversation going. So anything that can start the conversation going and getting more people to understand, the better.
Brilliant, James. A couple more quick ones around the teeth, rebrushing. What's the best time? Is it before meals, post meals, and flossing, yes or no?
Okay, so brushing, the ideal time is in the morning, 30 minutes after breakfast. Because when you have your breakfast, there's obviously food and bacteria in the mouth. But some people may be having acids. You don't want to brush straight away afterwards if there's any acidic things in the mouth. So brushing your teeth 30 minutes afterwards is the ideal time. And then obviously before bed, because the bacteria have a party at night because your saliva is naturally protecting everything. And when you sleep, your salivary flow decreases and then they have a party in there. So you want to give them as less streamers and party gear that they can play with.
I like that. And one for Victoria. This is from Leah. She says, children and baby gut problems can be often ignored. While they can be in extreme pain and terrible nappies, vomiting and reflux, why is this not looked into early on to avoid their pain?
I think the answer is that doctors don't have the answers. They don't have the actual solutions. So a lot of the time people just assume that babies get colic and they just get, these kind of weird poos and they're it's just baby stuff. Mostly because I don't think they have an option to solve that issue. And to be honest, I don't either. For my children care, birth is a really traumatic process. So I insist that my kids in my care, or my mums, if they get pregnant and have children, there are great practitioners out there like chiropractors and craniosacral therapists who can actually calm the nervous system down, ensure everything's working right, because that nervous system is fundamental to the digestive system throughout life, but especially in childhood. And, healthy kids become healthy adults. So use all the tools we have available so that we get these kind of digestive processes working smoothly. And it's often not a biome issue at that point. It's very much a digestive process issue because the body's evolving in the first year, 3 years, 7 years of life.
That's really, really good advice. Children, did you hear what Victoria said then? She said, healthy children become healthy adults. I know I seem like a nutritional nut at times and change that out for that and less rice and more cauliflower rice, but healthy kids, looking after your microbiome now. I'm convinced why today, if I look at carbs I eat, I put on weight immediately, is because I've damaged this over the last 30 years and I'm trying to undo the damage that I've done. Team, that's been brilliant today. I want to wrap up, if I can, by saying we've got to socially distance at the moment. We've got to wash our hands a lot. Do we believe probably the third best thing we can do then is to strengthen our immune system by eating real foods? So should it come into our family, our defense is as strong as possible. Is that a fair statement, or am I dramatizing the importance of the immune system?
No. I don't think it's possible to dramatize the importance of the immune system. Like, it's really seriously important. So, it's just, you nailed it. Yeah.
That's what we've got. We've got our number one currency is our health.
Yeah.
So let's boost that health. Let's put all the money into our health. Forgetting about the rest of it, let's put it in the health.
It's been an absolute delight having you both on. Hopefully we can get you back on again at some stage in the future. Everybody help me in thanking the lovely Victoria Fenton with great advice, and Dr. James Gornick telling us that our mouth is the starting point. Therefore, look what's going on here. That'll give you an indication to overall health. Anything you can do to bolster your immune system right now, I think we've all just agreed, is probably the third best thing after social distancing and washing our hands. Right, one or two final last things from me, and that is the question for tomorrow. I want you to guess how much sugar, the effect on your bloodstream, one glass of orange juice turns into. And quite on topic actually, wasn't it? Because early on, Jemmy Blacks asked us whether you should juice or whether you should blend. If you were to just juice the orange, so you're not getting the fibre, and you just juiced it or you bought it in the supermarket, what's the effect on the bloodstream? How much sugar effectively hits the bloodstream from 1 glass of orange juice? Thank you to... Whoa! I was just about to end today's show and my son says, whoa, Neddy, what's up?
Some food pictures coming in.
Oh, some food pictures. What did you cook for the first time yesterday? We're asking you on the show every single day. And a lot of you have been sending in your suggestions to Primal Living on Facebook. And that's the whole thing. Just as Dr. James Gornick said a moment ago, seize this moment. Reboot your efforts around what food you're eating. Look at what you can cook different. And as Victoria Fenton said, we're looking for nutritionally dense food. We've got to cut down the bland foods that are not full of vitamins and minerals. You want to boost your immune system right now, get rid of anything that's bland. There is very little benefit in pasta, in rice, in bread. Swap them out for cauliflower rice, cauliflower mash. Swap them out for courgette instead of pasta. Get food that's rich in good nutrition. Anyway, Jack, do you have some photos?
We do.
Oh, good.
First, we have
That's beautiful.
Chris Pattinson's lasagna that he made from the Caldaces book.
Ah,
Very
and that will be a lasagna without pasta. That will be using, I'm not quite sure.
Spinach.
Spinach, fantastic.
Right, and then we have,
Oh, is that a nice Thai green curry?
there's a lemony lentil soup.
A
with
lemony.
spice and kale.
Who's that from?
That is from Angela Merritt.
Angela Merritt, well done to you. That looks very edible.
Then we have Tiffany Crawford's healthy fruit snack. Ooh.
Isn't that very picturesque?
Yeah.
And what we love about those fruits in particular, you heard Victoria talking about how the antioxidant benefits of the berries and so on. That would be a plate full of great antioxidants.
Then we have Sally Taylor's cauliflower mash topped chicken and ham pie with spiced courgette coins.
Wow, super healthy. Cauliflower, an absolute must in our house. Well done to you.
And then finally we have Tracy Noble's curried sea bass with lentils. You're a big fan of sea bass.
Curried sea bass and lentils, well done to you. So that's great. You're all embracing this. Brilliant. We're trying to see the silver lining. We're changing our eating habits. Maybe as we come out the other side of COVID-19, maybe we're going to be healthier. Maybe we're going to be fitter. Maybe our immune system's going to be really bolstered. Do everything you can to stay safe till this time tomorrow. And we have some more amazing guests. Thank you for taking part.